There's something I think a lot of established business owners eventually discover. So you thought you were building a business, but somewhere along the way, you actually became the operating system. You're the reminder system, the follow up system, the project management system, the sales system, quality control. You're the person who remembers which client needs what. You're the person who knows where everything lives. You're the person people ask when they don't know what happens next. And because you're incredibly capable, for quite a long time it works until eventually you realize business doesn't really have systems. It has, well, you. And that's what I want to talk about today. Because I don't think the biggest problem for most established female business owners is that they aren't working hard enough. I think quite often they're working far too hard. The bigger problem is that too much of the business still depends on their personal memory, attention, energy, and availability. And that's a very different thing to solve. Now, quite bizarrely, a treehouse taught me something about my business quite recently. So a few days ago, my little boy Isaac presented Marley with a drawing while we were having lunch. Now, there was a slight issue initially because Marley managed to look at the plans upside down twice, but he eventually worked out what Isaac had drawn, and it was a treehouse. More specifically, it was Isaac's vision for what he wanted his treehouse to become. And Isaac took this very, very seriously. He's 7, by the way. He had plans, ideas, things that absolutely needed to be included. And Marley, well, he was already doing another job that afternoon. But the job he was doing wasn't particularly important, and he decided it could wait, so he stopped. And he started building Isaac's treehouse. Now, I need you to understand, this thing has somewhat escalated. We're no longer talking about a couple of bits of wood nailed to a tree. There are multiple levels. There are ladders, doors, windows, platforms. In fact, it's become worryingly close to something that Kevin McLeod might turn up and comment on. And we've started having breakfast up there. It's actually becoming one of my favourite places to sit. And I'm currently trying to establish whether my Wi-Fi connection reaches far enough, because there's every chance I'll eventually be recording content from a treehouse beside the pond. But the whole situation struck me because the only reason that afternoon could change so easily was that not everything else depended on one person rigidly sticking to a list. I could have looked at the plans and said, that can wait, this matters more. That is a choice. And I think a lot of business owners have lost the ability inside their business to make those choices. Not because they're disorganized, but because too many things depend on them personally. So when something is, they can't really choose. They're physically somewhere else, but mentally they're still holding 15 different tasks together all at the same time. And I think that is one of the biggest hidden costs of founder dependency. Now, founder dependency doesn't always look like complete chaos. And that is something important. You can have a really polished business and still have enormous founder dependency. You can have good revenue, a lovely brand, a team, lots of clients, a strong social presence. Everything can look incredibly successful from the outside, but inside, the founder is the glue. The glue is tired, and you might recognize some of this in your own world. You take a day off, but you keep checking your phone anyway. A team member sends you a message because they need a decision. You think, I'll just answer this quickly. Then a client asks a question. You answer. You suddenly remember something you forgot to do yesterday. You make a note. You remember somebody needed you to follow up with something. You open LinkedIn. You check the pipeline. You see another email. And before you know it, you technically took the day off, but your brain never left the business. That, my friend, is founder dependency. Another version might look a bit like this. You're working with your team, but everybody comes to you. Where is this? What should I say? What happens next? Can I send this? Who are we targeting? Has that been done? Which version do we use? What is the priority? Are you gradually becoming the human bridge between every part of your business? Because that doesn't scale. But more importantly for me, It does not create a particularly nice life. And I think sometimes we focus so much on whether a business model is financially scalable that we forget to ask if it is personally viable. So, can you actually keep living like this? If you double your clients, do you double the interruptions? If revenue doubles, do your working hours increase with it? If your team, if you add members to your team, do you actually gain capacity, or do you just gain more people who need answers? Those are really, really important questions that you need to be considering. One of the most common forms of dependency is that the founder becomes the memory bank because everything lives in your head. You know, Jane said she wanted to revisit something in September. You know, Sarah's proposal went out 3 weeks ago. You know that one prospect said she was waiting until after her holidays. You know which lead looked promising but never replied. You know which client was supposed to send something. You know what your VA is waiting for. You know what needs chasing. You know who needs paying. You know which content still needs uploading. You know all of it until you don't, because you are human. And this is the thing. Human beings are fantastic at judgment. We're brilliant at interpretation, connection, creativity, nuance, understanding somebody's mood, seeing context, knowing when something doesn't feel quite right. But we're not particularly good at databases. Yet so many founders are using their brains as a database, and then they feel guilty when something slips. The system should not be Rachel remembers everything. That is not a system, that's a risk. Now, I think this is where founders get stuck, because when you own a business, you're responsible for the outcomes of everything. And sometimes we accidentally interpret that as, therefore, I must personally execute every step. They're not the same thing. If I'm responsible for sales, that doesn't mean I personally need to search for every prospect. If I'm responsible for marketing, that does not mean I personally need to upload every post. If I'm responsible for the customer experience, well, that doesn't mean I need to manually remember every follow-up. If I'm responsible for quality, that doesn't mean every minor decision needs to land on my desk. Leadership is not about doing everything. Leadership is ensuring the right things happen at the right time, and that distinction is enormous. It was one of the hardest mindsets for capable founders because capability also becomes a trap. You think, well, it only takes me 10 minutes. Dangerous sentence, my friend. Do not go there. Step away. It's quicker if I do it myself. Danger signs. Nobody else does it quite like me. Potentially a dangerous sentence. And sometimes, true, those things are correct. But you need to extend the timeline. If something takes 10 minutes and you do it 5 times a week, that's nearly an hour. 50 weeks a year, that's one tiny thing has taken a working week from your life. If you have 10 of those, now we're talking months. And that is why small repetitive tasks deserve much more scrutiny than they generally get. Individually, they look harmless. Collectively, they consume founders like us. This is also why I've slightly complicated the relationship with productivity advice. I like being organized. I like systems. I like knowing what I'm doing. But I do not think the answer to founder overload is simply becoming faster at doing too much. If you are personally carrying 40 unnecessary tasks, making yourself 20% faster isn't going to fix the structure. It simply turns you into a more efficient bottleneck. You need to question the work itself. And there is a really useful hierarchy that I use. When you look at the task, ask yourself, first of all, does this need doing? You'll be amazed how rarely we ask that. Sometimes the correct answer is no. So stop, step away, delete it. Remove the report that nobody reads. Stop tracking the numbers that nobody uses. Stop creating content for a platform that has no strategic purpose. Stop doing the thing because you've always done the thing. That is the easiest win for you. Second question, does this need me? If the work matters, do you personally have to do it? If yes, fine, crack on. Protect the time. If not, let someone else. Third, could another person do it for me? This is delegation. And if the task is repeatable, predictable, and follows rules, then could a system do it? Which is our fourth question. That is where automation and AI becomes interesting. Not because technology is exciting, but because your time is. And that is the AI alchemy philosophy in one sentence, basically. The technology isn't the valuable thing. The time it gives back is where I'm interested. Now I want to talk about the cost, because I don't think we calculate this properly. If you spend 3 hours every week manually prospecting, what does that cost? You might say, well, nothing, I do it myself. Wrong. Your time is not free, my friend. 3 hours could have been a client conversation, a sales call, strategic thinking, creating something valuable, building a partnership, having lunch with somebody, taking your child somewhere, going riding, doing absolutely nothing for an hour and allowing your brain to recover. All of those things have value. And this is where I think established business owners need to stop valuing their time based on whether they could technically perform a task. I can muck out a stable. I can drill a fence post. I can build things. I can do admin. I can search LinkedIn. I can probably learn most tasks if you give me long enough. But capability is irrelevant. The question is Rachel the best resource for this? And your name goes into that sentence too. Is the founder the best resource? If the answer is no, there should be a good reason why the work still belongs to her. And because I've always done it, isn't going to cut it. That is not a good reason. The emotional cost is often much bigger. And I think women business owners, particularly women business owners, understand this, because we don't just carry tasks. We carry open loops. Things we need to remember, things we haven't finished, people we must reply to, plans we need to make, conversations we need to follow up on. And it becomes some kind of background noise. You can be standing making dinner and suddenly think, oh God, I didn't send that email. You can be driving and remember somebody who needs chasing. You can be watching your children play and mentally running through tomorrow's priorities. The business leaks into everything. And that is not always a time management problem. Sometimes it's a system problem. Your brain keeps holding the information because nowhere else reliably holds it. So your brain refuses to release it. And that, my friend, is exhausting. A good system is not just something that saves you 15 minutes. It's something your brain can trust. That is a huge change. It matters enormously. If I know something's captured, tracked, and will surface when it needs my attention, I don't need to hold it consciously all day. And that is mental freedom. And I think we massively undervalue that. Now, sales is another particularly interesting area because it's incredibly easy for founder dependency to hide here. You know you need a pipeline. You know you need conversations. You know that if nobody knows you exist, eventually your revenue will slow down and stop. So you manually create activity. You search LinkedIn, you browse profiles, you look at websites, you make lists. You try and decide who's a good fit. Then you start the conversations. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with any of that. The problem is what happens when your week gets busy. Because the client work feels urgent, the prospecting doesn't. So prospecting, well, we push it back. Then you have another busy week and we push it back again. You still have revenue because the work you sold last month is being delivered and everything on the surface appears fine. Until 3, 4, 5 weeks later, suddenly the pipeline is empty. Then the founder panics. She goes back to lead generation. She starts pushing, messaging, maybe posts more, maybe launches something, maybe tells herself, God, I just need to be more consistent. And then new work arrives, she gets busy again and she stops. That is not a motivational problem. It's not even a discipline problem. It is structural. The sales line is too dependent on the founder's available time, and that is precisely the type of dependency you need to look to be removing. Now, I want to be very clear here because I'm not interested in removing humanity from sales. I think we need more humanity in sales, not less. The conversations need to be human. The relationships, 100% human. Your judgment, always human. How you listen should be human. How you understand somebody's business should be human. How you decide whether you're actually a good fit, human. That is valuable work. What is less valuable? Spending 2 hours manually trying to locate people. That is not the same thing. And I think this is one of the best ways to think about automation. Automate around relationships instead of managing the relationship. Let the systems remove the repetitive searching, remembering and organising and moving. Then allow the founder to put more energy into the actual conversation. That's what I want. Because I don't want AI Alchemy clients becoming robotically efficient. I want them becoming more human where being human matters. And that is a totally different ambition. Now, Connection Scout is a good example. It's a great example, in fact, of this philosophy, because the problem we are solving is not Rachel's clients don't know how to use LinkedIn. It's not they're incapable of finding a prospect. Of course they can find prospects. The problem is that finding qualified people to talk to is repetitive, time-consuming work that needs to happen consistently, and that is a perfect candidate for a system. So Connection Scout takes that responsibility for helping identify the right kinds of people for you. The founder still chooses how she engages with them. She still has the conversation and builds the relationship. She brings the value to the connection, but she's no longer spending the same amount of founder hours repeatedly trying to find where the conversation should begin and who they should begin with. And that is where I think AI should really be sitting in our businesses, quietly, in the background, removing friction, not screaming, look at this incredible AI technology. Founder doesn't need to become fascinated by a mechanism. She needs to feel the results, and that is what matters. Now, a business that needs your judgment, not your constant presence. There is a distinction here that I want you to consider. Would you rather build a business that needs your judgment or a business that needs your constant presence? Because I think that is one of the clearest strategic questions a founder can answer. A business needing my judgment is fine. I should make important decisions. I should decide where we are going. I should use my experience. I should be involved where my involvement creates disproportionate value. But if the business needs my constant presence, well, I haven't really built much freedom into it, have I? And that is particularly important for me because I made a very deliberate decision when I started AI Alchemy. I wanted a 10-hour work week. That constraint has forced me to confront dependency very quickly, because if I only have 10 hours, I simply can't be the operating system because there aren't enough hours. I need things captured elsewhere. I need tasks visible so I can just snapshot of where I am. I need the team to know what they own. I need recurring things to recur without my brain being the alarm clock. I need lead generation activity that does not depend entirely on me deciding if I've got time today or not. And it's not perfect. Of course it isn't. We're constantly improving systems. We find things that don't work. We stress test things. We discover bottlenecks, but we fix them. That is business. But the direction is clearer. Less dependence on Rachel for repeatable work. More Rachel where Rachel actually matters. And that is a very simple strategic rule. So here's a practical exercise anyone can try. I want you to imagine you're disappearing for 7 days. No laptop, no inbox, no WhatsApp, no checking in. Nothing catastrophic has happened. You've simply gone away. What happens inside your business? Take a piece of paper and write down every area: sales, marketing, delivery, admin, finance, team, client support, lead gen, follow-up, content. And then ask yourself, would this continue without me for 7 days? Now, you're not trying to score 100%. This is not the exercise. Some things genuinely should wait for you. But look for the repeatable things that unnecessarily stop. Then, beside every item that stops, ask why. Is it because nobody knows how to do it? Nobody owns it? The information's in my head? There's no process, no automation. I don't trust the system. I've never taken time out to set it up. That answer tells you what kind of problem you actually have. And then I would choose one thing, not 10, just one. The one thing that would create the biggest reduction in dependency on you. Fix it. Build a process, delegate it, automate it, remove it, whatever feels appropriate, and then repeat. This is how resilient businesses are built. Not through one enormous transformation, but steadily reducing unnecessary founder dependency. Now, there's another element here that is less practical and more emotional. Someone doesn't know what she could stop doing, so she just doesn't give herself permission, because she's built part of her identity around being the one who copes, the one who remembers, the one who fixes, the one who handles everything. People praise you for it. You're amazing. I don't know how you do it. You manage so much. And you do. But there comes a point where being impressive is not the same thing as being free. I don't want my ultimate business achievement to be that everybody thinks Rachel can juggle an extraordinary amount. I want to be able to say, Rachel built something that doesn't require extraordinary juggling. This is more interesting to me. That's what makes me sit up and pay attention, because there is no prize for becoming the most exhausted person in your own company. And there is definitely no commercial advantage to being the only person capable of keeping everything moving. That makes the business less resilient, not more. Now, this is not only a lifestyle conversation either, because founder dependency constrains growth. Once you have a ceiling, there is only one of you. There is only so many decisions you can make, so many messages you can answer, so many prospects you can research, so many clients you can remember, and ultimately there's only so many hours you can work. If revenue growth requires a matching increase in founder input, eventually you're going to hit capacity. And at that point, people often assume they need to hire. And sure, sometimes they do. But hiring without fixing systems simply creates another layer of complexity into your business. So now you have a team member who also depends on the founder. And instead of doing everything yourself, you spend your day answering the person who is doing it. That's not the transformation we were hoping to achieve. Systems need to come with growth. Clear ownership, clear process, clear hands-off, data, clear decisions. Then people and technology can genuinely start to create leverage. Without that, you just create more moving parts around the same bottleneck. And that bottleneck, my friend, is you. I also think we underestimate calm commercially. Calm gets treated like a nice lifestyle bonus, something you get after the business succeeds. For me, that's back to front. A calm founder makes better decisions. A founder with space can see the opportunities. She can listen properly to her clients. She can think strategically. She can also say no. She can notice what isn't working. She can build relationships, respond to opportunities instead of automatically rejecting them because she has no capacity. And that matters. Even Brucey, my horse's strange little film opportunity, is an example of that. When something unexpected lands, I want to be able to consider it. I don't want my immediate response to every opportunity to be, I can't, I've got to work. That's not the life I set out to create. And I suspect it's not the life most of you started your businesses to create either. You probably didn't leave one form of employment so you could build a company that refuses to give you any annual leave. You wanted more agency, more flexibility, more choice. The business model should eventually deliver some of that, not just promise it. So where do you start? Well, if you're listening to this and thinking, yeah, I'm absolutely the system, don't try and fix the entire company tonight. You'll overwhelm yourself and probably create 14 new projects in the process. Instead, notice the dependency. For the next 7 days, every time you think, I need to remember, write it down. Every time somebody asks you something they should not need to ask you, write it down. Every time you repeat something you've already done before, write it down. Every time an activity stops because you were too busy doing it, write it down. Every time you catch yourself saying, it's quicker if I just do it, write it down. This list is your gold, because those moments show you where your systems are weak. Then choose one. Now, my favourite question is, which of these, if removed from me, would create the greatest sense of relief? Because that should be your starting point. Sometimes relief is perfectly good business metric. If getting one thing out of your head makes you calmer every day, well, that matters. And this brings me back to the question underneath everything at AI Alchemy. Whenever we remove a task, automate a process, or build a system, I want to know, what part of my life am I giving back? Not how many AI tools have we installed. I don't care. Not how clever is this workflow. Nice, but irrelevant. What changed? Did you stop working after dinner? Did you get Friday afternoons back? Did you stop checking LinkedIn every single day? Did you know that leads were still being found while you were with your children? Did you stop carrying 20 follow-ups in your head? Did you finally take that week off without having to check in? That is the kind of measure I'm interested in. And if we can do that while maintaining or improving commercial performance, that is where this gets really interesting, because now we're not choosing between successful business and a good life. We're designing a business so one supports the other. So I want to leave you with this. You are not supposed to be the system in your business. You're supposed to lead it. Your experience matters, your judgment matters, your relationships matter, your creativity matters, your presence in the right places matter. But your brain should not ever be the CRM. Your memory should not be the project management tool. Your free afternoons should not be your lead generation strategy. And your constant availability should not be the thing holding the entire operation together. The aim isn't to remove you from the business. The aim is to remove the business from the parts of you it never needed in the first place. And if one of those places where you're still acting as the system is prospecting, manually looking for qualified leads to talk to whenever you happen to have enough time, then that is exactly where Connection Scout can help you. It takes the repetitive finding stage out of your hands so you can put time back into the thing that actually does need you. The conversations, the relationships, the human part, because the best systems don't make your business less human. They create more space for you to be human where it matters, and ideally enough space to occasionally have breakfast in a treehouse too. I'll leave you with that.